It's 8:46 on CNA 938. Neha Thakkar was away from Singapore for 12 years and returned home just about a year ago. During the time overseas, she never felt disconnected from Singapore. She visited often and followed the news and even showed up for every Singapore embassy or consulate event. Neha even volunteered with local Singaporean clubs, bringing people together and showcasing Singapore to others. She is a proud Singaporean.
Very much so. Neha has had some tremendous overseas experiences, which have been a boon and a curse since returning. She's worked in public policy, advocacy, and partnerships at UNICEF, the Red Cross, Al Jazeera, and Harvard University, among other international organizations.
And she has written a Today online article, and it's titled, What Our Singapore Means to Me After 12 Years Away from Home. And Our Singapore is this year's National Day theme. So that's how she worked it into her title. And Neha joins us now. Neha, can you tell us about some of these countries you've lived in?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Lance and Melanie, for having me on your show. I'm so sorry I don't sound 100% right now, but that is not taking me away from the excitement of National Day. So happy birthday, Singapore. Happy National Day to you guys. Happy National Day to us.
Thank you, Neha.
Fantastic, Neha. You can tell, well, I can tell from your voice. Yeah, it's a bit scratchy, a bit hoarse. Have you been wishing a lot of people happy National Day? Is that the reason why your voice is a bit hoarse today?
Yeah, but it's probably the excitement of being home at last after 12 years, where I'm just like, oh my God, I am waiting for National Day tomorrow. I'm going to be glued to the television, and hopefully at some point I get the lottery to be, live checking out the parade.
Bring it on. Bring on National Day for Neha.
Yes, indeed. And to answer your question, well, it's been kind of all over the place, and I'll just try to go from east to west. I've lived in the Pacific Islands, in Solomon, in Fiji, Vanuatu, and then in Qatar and UAE for a while, and then in France, Switzerland, US, and now I'm back home. I'm home.
You're a global trekker. That's fantastic. Now, when you came back, you noticed that some things were different. And one of the things you talk about in your article, in your commentary, is about a biasness against older workers and the ostracism of the elderly. What did you notice away and back here?
I'll be generalizing if I talk about all of these different parts of the world when I say what I noticed abroad, but I will speak about Singapore specifically. That kind of surprised me and shocked me in many ways, because like you quite rightly pointed out, I am a very proud Singaporean. I'm a very proud Asian as well. There are lots of things about the Asian culture that make sense, like the way we look up to our elders for their experience, for their wisdom. But then at the same time, I was surprised that when it comes in the professional sphere, if a 50-year-old or a 55-year-old is to look for a job tomorrow, it's quite hard for them. It's really hard for them. And it started off as an anecdotal thing where it was a colleague at work who told me that she really struggled to find a job when she decided to come back to the working force at the age of 55. And she, according to her, she was quote unquote lucky that my employer gave her the job ultimately. And that led to, me researching and looking into, okay, how serious is this problem? And I have to say the data is not very comforting, and in many ways doesn't fit in with the rest of the Asian culture in many ways, where we look up to our elders. We actually respect their experience, but yet we struggle to perhaps integrate them, especially more so in, as the professional sphere gets more and more digital, perhaps, or, the whole future of work. It's slightly concerning.
And when you did a comparison, how do the citizens and people in places like Vanuatu, for instance, where you went, treated their elderly people?
First of all, the economy of Vanuatu is not as advanced as Singapore, so I don't think we can compare those two specific countries, because the culture, the economy, the way of life is very different. For instance, in Vanuatu, there are certain islands where they still use the barter system. So it's they're not even the same zip code. So I don't think it'd be fair to compare those two.
Okay,
But in terms of how they treat their elderly, in terms of that.
It's similar in the sense that they do, of course, respect their elderly. So that in the personal sphere, it's the same. But professionally, because the economy is not the same as Singapore, it's very hard to compare because you still have a lot of people who are involved in farmlands and farming. So, whatever age, they're still farming their crops. So it's not a fair comparison there. But like, say, for instance, in Switzerland, which I would say is a better comparison to Singapore, it was evident that people, age was not such a huge criteria or concern in their minds when they were looking for a job. So it wasn't, I feel like the sense I get is that the anti-discriminatory laws that Switzerland has is perhaps more strong or better enforced than it is here in Singapore because, I'll give you another example, and this is not related to aging as such, but when I moved back home a year ago, I was job hunting, and I came across at least 2 application forms, which in black and white asked me, if you're a woman, are you pregnant? And if yes, how many months? And that was shocking. I was just like, hang on, is this even legal? Are you even allowed to ask me a question like that? And I actually looked up the Ministry of Manpower, and I looked up a lot of different resources to, find out if this is even legal. And there is no, strong law against it, although we do have an anti-discrimination law, no doubt. But companies still ask these questions and they get away with it.
Neha, you also talked about a disproportionate number of women in Singapore dropping out of the workforce due to family responsibilities as compared to men. But I think that's slowly changing as well because there are some companies here that are allowing employees, female employees, to work flexi hours and even work from home.
You're right. It is definitely changing, slowly but certainly it is. But the fact that 43% of women have said that they drop out of the workforce due to family responsibilities versus just 3.8% of men who do the same because of family responsibilities, it is definitely something that we need to then examine. Is it effective? Is it enough of a norm yet? Which it isn't. Obviously, it isn't a norm. It has just started off. The concern with the flexible working hours is if it is associated specifically to women needing to take some work away from their workplace and go home, then it's again going to have a negative bias against the idea itself. There's going to be a negative bias against hiring female employees because, hey, they're probably going to ask for more flexible hours than men. So I think we are definitely going the right direction, and I'm extremely pleased that we are. But right now, the statistics are not very comforting. But I'm hoping, and I'm positive, actually, they will change. It's going to get better. We're on the right track. For what it counts, we're on the right track.
All right, because there are some things you want to change as well, and you'll get to that regarding the Overseas Singaporean Unit, OSU, set up in 2006. It is the key agency in ensuring Singaporeans feel a sense of connection and desire to return from overseas and offer some guidance for people coming back here. But you say that there are some improvements. Can you highlight some of them?
Yeah, sure. So one of the interesting things that I noticed with the OSU, by the way, and I've been in touch with them for the last 12 years, so now coming back to Singapore, I feel like suddenly they've ghosted me, if that makes sense. But of course, they're the Overseas Singaporean Unit, so I understand their focus is specifically Singaporeans living overseas. And they tend to address very technical issues. And if you go to their website, you will notice there are 3 specific sections. Number 1, going abroad. Number 2, staying abroad. Number 3, coming home. And the coming home part is largely about, how do you register your address for your NRIC, or how do you find jobs, or how do you move all your stuff from overseas to Singapore? And that's all well and good. That is very useful information. But as soon as we get back here, and especially I feel as the government did for a while have an approach where they were encouraging Singaporeans to go out, go overseas, get some experience and come back home. But when we come back home, if it has been sufficiently long enough time, or for that matter, even depending on the age or the environment, how different it was compared to home, the re-entry can be a bit jarring. It can definitely be a little where a lot of it is familiar, but a lot of it, you're suddenly looking at it in a very different way. And it's a very adaptive challenge that needs a very adaptive way of actually dealing with it. And some of the ways, I mean, just even connecting different overseas Singaporeans who returned home, just connecting them on a platform where they can meet up, whether it's online or offline. I think that's already a step that will help us meet other people who are probably going through similar challenges and understanding how we can address them collectively. Because to a great extent, I have to say, initially my experience, it felt like a lone struggle. But the more I read up about it, the more I researched, the more I proactively went and sought for information and for people, that's when I realized that, hang on, I'm not the only one who feels this way. This is actually quite a common problem. And in fact, there's also a terminology for it. It's called the reverse culture shock.
Hey, Neha, I wish we could go on. We have to make time for the news at 9 p.m. But if anyone wants to know what Neha wrote about, once again, you can read her Today Online article called What Our Singapore Means to Me After 12 Years Away from Home. You can read it. It's available right now on Today Online.